What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? NoZoupForYou here, and it's good to be back. I've been in Schenectady, New York for the last week, and it feels like it's been forever. No World of Warships, no gaming, no nothing. Just a boring hotel room in upstate New York watching The Mandalorian over and over, along with the newest episodes of Rick and Morty. That was basically my week when I wasn't doing Army-related stuff. Though I will say I've had worse annual training. It sure beats being in the field when you're in a Homewood Suites getting free beer and food every evening, but I digress. The gameplay you're watching right now was provided to me by Norse75. And good lord, he had a hell of a round. 7 kills in the T7 Italian cruiser Zara. I know a lot of you out there right now are thinking the Italian cruisers aren't that good at all. I don't know, maybe Norse can prove otherwise, or maybe this ship just fits him, or maybe he just happened to get lucky. But just a phenomenal round, and I enjoy when you all send these to me. I really do. I love seeing players do good. I love showcasing your all's videos. So if you do have a game that you feel is highlight worthy, if you have one of those absolutely wonderful rounds where you sink 7 ships or do 300,000 damage, or you get that solo warrior, go ahead and send it my way. NoZoupForYou@gmail.com. Please. I will be more than willing to highlight it. I tend to get tired of showing my own gameplay just because I have good days and I have bad days. And when I have bad days, it's a struggle to find something at least remotely interesting to put up there. But if you provide it to me, I know I'm getting good stuff. So that's the email address, NoZoupForYou@gmail.com. Go ahead and send me your best gameplay, and I will get it out there. And I'll either use it as a background video for commentary, might use it as a ship review, or I might commentate on it and just say, hey, this guy was an absolute badass. This is how he did it. Watch. But anyhow, that's not the topic of today's video. The topic of today's video is trying to help you be a better player. Trying to open your eyes to various ways to play. So through my experience in this game, I have decided that there are 3 different types of players. Good players, that is. And if you don't aspire to be a good player, that's fine. Not everybody does, not everybody has the time to do that, nor does everyone care. I mean, some players want to be better. You don't have to be a great player to want to get better. You don't have to try to be a great player. If you just want to pull your weight more, or you want to learn to be better in a ship, that's perfectly fine. You can be perfectly average and help your team, and players will love you for that. They'll want to be your teammate. Doesn't matter. But some of you do want to take your gameplay to the next level. And that's also fine. That's good. We might not have the time to do it, but it's worth looking into. So, I've decided throughout the course of my playing this game that there are 3 different types of players. There's the Reactionists, there's the Strategists, and the intellects. These are your 3 primary type of players that you see that are either good or great. So the first category, which I'm deeming the Reactionists, I consider myself to fall into this category most of the time. So the Reactionists are those that play the game and they react to a given situation. They go out to cap A. Once they get on A, ships start shooting at them, they react. That is what you do as a Reactionist. You react to the gameplay around you. Whether it's ships shooting at you, aircraft carriers coming in, you basically play the game with little thought. You don't strategize, you don't go out there and think about the path you want to take. You just play the game. And there are players that are really good that do this. There's some great players out there that are great reactionary players. Just because you're a Reactionist doesn't mean that you're not going to be a great player, or you're not even a good player. That's not the point. This is just telling you there's one type of player out there that primarily reacts to things, and that's perfectly fine. So Reactionists can be good players, but in my opinion, it's harder for them to be great players, because they're very two-dimensional in ways. And again, I'm drawing from my own experience and my own play style, which can heavily be reactionist sometimes. And I think part of that is also because I just don't have the time to play enough sometimes to get into a rhythm. So I find myself jumping in And when I'm just having fun, I'm just reacting to things around me. And like I said, doesn't mean you're not a good player if you're a reactionist, or you just react to everything going on. Doesn't mean you can't be a good player. Doesn't even mean you can't be a great player. That's just one type of player out there out of 3 categories that I've determined exist. So the second category are the strategists. And the strategists, in my opinion, are what most of your great players are going to fall into, this category, the strategist. And what do I mean by the strategist? Well, it's pretty much the opposite of the reactionist. If you're a strategist, you view the entire battlefield pretty much as a chessboard. Before you make a move, you take everything into account. You look at the battlefield, you say, okay, if I move to cap A, that battleship over there is going to move to push me. That's going to open up my teammates over on this side of the map. They're going to be able to flank, sink them. I'm going to be able to cap. You get the point. Unlike the reactionist that just moves in, tries to cap, all hell breaks loose, and they react to it, the strategist actually takes the time to decide what they want to do. They take a little more time than the reactionist. They view the battlefield. They see where the ships are going to go. And some of the best players in the game do this. They're great at this. They're great at just taking everything in and being very deliberate in the moves they make. And because of that, they're able to shape the battlefield. Instead of reacting to the battlefield, they're able to control it. And that's a great thing. And that's why you see so many great players being able to do this. That's why so many of them fall into this strategist category. The last category of players you have are what I call the intellects. And somewhat the same as the strategists, many great players are intellects. And do I mean they're smart? No, I don't mean they're like, geniuses. I don't mean they have a high IQ even. What I mean by the intellects in this game, they're the ones that remember every single aspect of every ship in the game. They can tell you where the citadels on a Cleveland are. They can tell you how much armor that a Kurfürst has. They can tell you what's needed to overmatch every single ship in the game, and they can use that to their advantage. They know where to aim, and they know why to aim there. They know every single facet about the ships in the game, and they're good because of that. And some of them are great because of that. So while they might not have the skills to be a reactionist and a good player in that sense, or they might not have that battle mind where they can survey the field, they have the ability to take on a ship, pinpoint its weaknesses, and nail it. They can peg citadels that reactionists and strategists might not be able to hit because they know exactly where to aim. So you can be a strategist and an intellect at the same time. You can be a reactionist and an intellect at the same time. And that combination of either of those two, reactionist and intellect, or strategist and intellect, is the makings of a great player. And there's a lot of people out there that have those two abilities. And out of the 3, I would say that the best players in the game are going to be your strategists and your intellects combined. Those players that are able to survey the entire battlefield, they're able to take stock in what's happening around them, and rather than reacting on a whim, they're able to control things around them and use their knowledge of the enemy's ships and what they're up against. They're able to use that knowledge and take advantage of weaknesses on the enemy's ships. So those two combinations right there, you're going to find in your best players in the game. Now, say you're an average player and you want to get better. You're like, oh, that's great. You consider yourself a reactionist. You want to get better, but how are you going to get better? How are you just going to become a strategist overnight or an intellect overnight? You're not going to be able to. It's going to take work. And it's going to take a conscious effort if you want to be a strategist to, instead of rushing into A, just looking at the battlefield and saying, okay, I'm in a cruiser. There's hilly terrain right there. There's an island. I'm going to post up against that. If I do that, I'm going to be able to hit this ship over here. I'm going to be able to flank here. And I'm going to be able to lock down this area. And when you watch King of the Seas or other clan battles, that's exactly what's going on in those rounds. Most of those players, a lot of the clan players, are strategists. That's how they see the battlefield, and that's why they're so good, because they have that ability. They're not reactionists. Now, if you're trying to become more of a strategist, and you consider yourself a reactionist, if you're not playing destroyers, maybe give destroyers a try. I think a lot of reactionists tend to play battleships, and not because battleships are easy mode, but they provide that protection where you can react. Where if you do rush into A, you're not going to get slaughtered. You're going to be able to survive a little bit. If you're a reactionist in a cruiser, your survivability is probably not going to be as long than if you're a reactionist in a battleship. So if you're looking to become more of a strategist, I would say play a destroyer or a cruiser. And the reason for that is their survivability. Well, they're both a little different. A destroyer is very good for strategizing because you basically have to. You're fast, your torpedoes, everything about the ship requires foresight. And being able to know where the enemy ships are going, being able to cap, being able to know that if the cap's being capped, there's probably an enemy out there, and strategizing where to go from there. Sure, you can play as a reactionist. Enemy ship comes up, you fire torps, cap is getting capped, you flee, whatever. But it's also a good way to start becoming that strategist. Cruiser's even better because your armor just is not up to the same that a battleship is, and you can't stay hidden like a destroyer. So if you're really looking to up your game completely, I would highly suggest, if you're not playing cruisers, try to start playing cruisers. Because it's very important in cruisers to determine the lay of the battlefield and be very deliberate where you go. They don't have the survivability of battleships. They don't have the concealment of destroyers. So it's a lot harder being reactionary in a cruiser. And that's why I think if you want to get better, if you want to become a strategist instead of just a reactionist, jump in those cruisers, play them more, and before rushing into A, stop and just look at the battlefield and say, all right, we've got 5 ships over here. The bulk of my team's over there. As one player, do I really want to rush in there? What if I go to B instead and post up? Or shoot over the island and rain down on those enemies where they can't hit me, but I can hit them. Rather than just rushing right into A, 1-on-4, and reacting against them. I would say my best games that I have are usually in cruisers because it forces me to forget about being a reactionist. It forces me to be that strategist. It forces me to do that. So when I'm not just playing to play, when I'm playing to actually better myself or play good or as good as I can, I choose cruisers for that reason because you have that ability and it's that important to do it in those ships. Now, if you want to be an intellect, that's a completely different tier right there. That takes time. That takes research. It takes knowledge. And not all players have that. Some players just want to dive into the game. They want to play. They want to have fun, and that's great. I understand that. I completely understand that. It's very tough to be an intellect because there is a lot of stuff in this game to memorize. And some players have done it. Some players are phenomenal at it. Some players just love learning about all the ships. They love learning their weaknesses. They love learning about the armor. And they know those things I mentioned earlier. They know what it takes to overpin a certain ship. They know if their guns are going to be effective against the ship they're shooting at. And if they're not, they know to move on to a different target. And that's how they view the game. That's the prism they look through. And I kind of admire intellects for that because it's tough being one of the intellects in the game. It's tough acquiring that level of knowledge. And better yet, it's tough acquiring that level of knowledge and using it to your ability and becoming a better player because of it. So to the intellects out there, congratulations. For those of you that know where to shoot, why to shoot there, and are able to take advantage of the weaknesses on ships, out of the 3 different types of players, you're the hardest category to become because there are a lot of ships, there's a lot of knowledge to acquire. But again, out of the 3, though, I'd say that strategists, the majority of your really great players are the strategists. And like I said again, if you consider yourself a reactionist, it doesn't mean you're not going to be a great player. It doesn't mean you aren't a great player. There's a lot of Unicum and Super Unicum players out there that are solely reactionists, flying around in destroyers or battleships or even cruisers. But if you want to up your game, if you want to get to that next level or become even better, then think about trying to become the strategist. Think about looking at the battlefield in that chessboard type of way. Before you charge in, stop for a moment and just think, what are the consequences if I go here? What are the consequences if I charge in? What are the consequences if I hang back? Do I really want to rush into a situation where I'm 1 on 2 or 3 or even 4? And that's what a reactionist is again. And that's why strategists, that's what everybody should be aiming for. It's what everybody should be aiming for. But anyhow, those are the 3 types of classes. I want to know, what do you consider yourself? Are you a reactionist? Are you a strategist? Or are you an intellect? I've told you what I consider myself most of the time. I'm primarily reactionist sometimes, with a little bit of strategy in there, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, a lot of reactionists get stuff done. They go out there, and provided their skills are good enough, they can react and they can take out enemy ships. But they gotta work a little harder than strategists, because they can't control the battlefield. And strategists, they play a lot more rounds, they got a lot more time, they got a unique way of viewing the battlefield, so good on them. And then again, your last class, the intellects. The intellects out there that have learned everything there is to learn about the game and exploit it. They're probably the smallest subset of players out there, but they're vital because they provide a lot of knowledge and it serves them well. And then you've got your mixes of all 3. Your reactionists and your strategists, what I consider myself most of the time. Then you've got your strategists and intellects. So I want to know what you think you are. Once again, North 75, phenomenal round, got the Confederate, got the high caliber, got the Kraken, 7 kills, and at the very last second, he gets the cap in this round too. Just a phenomenal round in an Italian cruiser. I got to give it to you. This was just one of those rounds that you see every so often, and when you do, you're just amazed by it. And you can tell the majority of the players in this game are saying the same thing. Nothing but respect on the enemy team for Norse. I'll talk to you all later. Zoop out.